Parshas B'Shalach begins with B'Shalach Paro. It says that Paro sent the Jewish people out. They're on their way, and of course, as the story goes, one of the classic all-time lines that I personally find to be humorous, but it actually occurred to me this year that maybe it's not meant to be as funny as it sounds. The Jewish people get to the sea, right? They actually were past the sea. According to what the Medrash of Pshat, they were actually past the sea, and then they were told to come back to the sea so this whole episode could take place. Hashem wanted to perform this fantastically amazing miracle on behalf of Klal Yisrael so they could see, as Elisha explains, how he's prepared to turn creation upside down for the sake of the Jewish people. How he's prepared to do so many fantastic miracles that are not even necessary. We could have been long gone. He could have, the same way he put into Paro's heart to chase after us, he could have just let Paro's heart alone to not chase after us. I mean, it was a suicide run. It was a suicide mission to go after the nation that basically just crushed your country via 10 plagues, and now to go after it, you're asking for trouble. You're asking for more pain and more suffering. So he does, anyhow, because God, Hashem hardens his heart and sends them out. And Hashem brings the Jewish people back to the Yam Suf. So this whole scenario can be set up. The Jewish people don't know it's a setup just yet, but they are trying to, figure out what's happening, what Hashem is trying to do with them, and why they're brought back like this, and doubling back. And so they come and they said to Moshe Rabbeinu, "What? There weren't enough graves to bury us in Egypt. You took us out here to die and be buried instead." Jewish sarcasm. And it's like, you just imagine the scenario. This Moshe, all uptight about the situation, he's, praying to Kosh Baruch Hu to save the Jewish people. He sees the Egyptians coming. He sees the sea over here. And even though he might have complete faith that Hashem, and did, they're going to be saved, but the nudnikim, all the complainers, I mean, millions and millions of complainers and panic, I would not, no matter what, want to be in that type of situation. It would just be overwhelming. And so they complain to Moshe Rabbeinu with the sarcasm. But it occurred to me for the first time this year that maybe they were actually referring to the fact that just a little while ago, I guess about a week ago, that 12 million Jews died and had to be buried, probably miraculously by Kodesh Baruch Hu himself, as we mentioned last week. That because all this 12 million being buried, that maybe that's what they're referring to. They're actually saying that because we had to bury 12 million, the other 1/5 that went out had to be buried in the desert because there's no more room in Egypt to bury all the people. I don't know. I've never saw anything on that, but it just occurred to me that might be what they're referring to. But nonetheless, it's tremendous humor. But as the Lashon Pshat aside, that Hashem did this specifically, but still there's the sorrow. There's the pain, the suffering, and they had to go through that. Apparently, it wasn't Hashem saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, tell the Jewish people, like by the man, by the way, that happens later on, but which he doesn't do. But Hashem didn't say, tell the Jews, don't worry, don't panic. It's okay. It's all going to work out fine. You'll see. I know it's a fantastic miracle. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's a big surprise, right? But you'll see it and you'll be saved and no problem. And so don't panic. Just be nice and calm by the sea. He didn't do that. He didn't tell them that. On the contrary, they were left having to cope with the situation until finally they had the redemption. And even after the redemption took place, still they got nervous, the Gemara says. One of the reasons why the Egyptians were spit out on the same side that the Jews came up on, because they didn't go straight across the sea. They went actually in a semicircle. They came up and they went around. So the Jews were worried that just like we have come up on the shore, that maybe the Egyptians also have survived the sea and come up on the shore. So therefore, Kosh Baruch Hu drowned them before their very eyes. They could see it. So there was no shilas, questions at all about whether or not that the Egyptians survived. And then they finally go free. But it was traumatic. It was a trauma, for sure, without question. It was a trauma. And the question is, why is that necessary? Why is it so important? And then it happens all through life the same way. But in a sense, it's a very simple concept that we'll discuss, but it's also a very, very profound one, too, that unfortunately most people, they don't think about. They're not aware of it necessarily. And it certainly helps with life. And the truth is that it's kind of hinted to, in David HaMelech, through David HaMelech. In the Gemara says that David HaMelech said to Kosh Baruch Hu one day after a day in the base medrash where they made fun of him because the whole episode of Bathsheba, and he was accused of adultery. So they asked him, as if they were only asking a base medrash question, hey, David, what's the din? What's the halacha if someone commits Gilia Rayas? And he knows exactly what they're talking about. They're humiliating him. So David complains to Hashem and says, if they were to have cut my arm open, my hand open, my wrist open, blood wouldn't come out. There's no blood anymore. You know why? Because I'm so embarrassed. I've been so humiliated by all these people, and so much consternation from all my enemies that it's like my blood has run away. So he's complaining to Kosh Baruch Hu about the situation. And in Tehillim, you see, he often mentions his enemies. He often mentions, his the people who are after him. And we know the story with Shulam Melech. It was not an easy life. That's just the beginning of it. It starts off that his mother is forced to hide his birth. And as a result of that, I mean, she can't hide the birth itself, but who the father was, because of all the backstory that's involved. And as a result of this, for a couple of decades, David and Melech is treated like a mamzer, because they assume, because Yishai had split from his wife, they didn't get divorced, they simply separated, because he was worried that maybe because they came from Rus and the whole, it's like all balagan about their lineage. So therefore he thought that maybe he wasn't fitting to be married to a Jewish woman, so therefore they split temporarily, but she knew it was okay. And eventually David was born, and they thought he was a mamzer, because they thought that the mother had an affair on the side, because the father didn't, the Klal Yishai didn't know about it. So he had to live with this reality. His mother told him for a couple of decades he's going to suffer with this until finally Kosh Baruch Hu decided to come along and straighten the situation up, which of course he did later on. And when it came time to anoint the new king, so all the sons of Yishai, 7 sons showed up, and they were all rejected by Kosh Baruch Hu. And when Shmuel Hanavi, who was there to anoint the next king of the Jewish people, the real official king, said, is there anybody else? And of course, the immediate response was no, because there's no way in the world, David Melech, as he wrote about himself, Evan Masu Bonim Haisa LaRosh Pina, such a fantastic pasuk that he wrote, meaning that the stone teaches you so much about Jewish history, that the stone that the builders despised became the cornerstone. In other words, you didn't want me, you rejected me, and yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only accepted me, he's made me your king. I'm the ancestor of Mashiach ben David, who's going to save the entire Jewish people, eventually the final redemption, and that's be the biggest hero of all history. So he understands that this is all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I mean, he knows it. He knows. I mean, the Gemara says that no one can raise their finger. They can't raise their finger, or hurt. Sorry, they can't stop their finger. They can't hurt their finger unless it's decreed in Shemayim that should happen. Now, nothing happens in this world. No one can cause us any pain, any suffering, nothing, unless Hashem decides it has to happen. So what David HaMelech should really say to Hashem is not, it's like if you come home and you had a bad day, and your spouse says to you, how was your day? And you start to complain about what the day was like. You do it kind of like, thinking that they can't change it anyhow. They can't change the situation. You're venting, and they're being a sounding board to help you ease the trauma from your day, all the pain that you suffered. But it's not like they're going to go change the situation, or that they're responsible for the situation. No, not at all. So that's what David Melech. That's how he talks to Hashem about it, seemingly. And the reality is that he knows full well. This is what he should have said. This is what he really actually should come home and kind of goes Baruch and say, God, you and I both know that Shaul wouldn't be the way he is if it wasn't for you. He wouldn't be chasing after me to kill me if it wasn't for you. You're the one sending him after me. He has no will separate from your will. He may think he does, and people may assume that he will, but you run the world. And Doeg and everybody who's causing me problems, the people in the base of Medrash, you. Because Hashgacha Prati, you could easily make it that I don't have these problems, and you have at times. So can't you just lay off? Can't you just back off a bit and just cut me some slack and let me just live my life without all this difficulty and pain and suffering and sorrow and agmas nefesh, right? That's what he should say. He doesn't say that. He talks to Kodesh Baruch Hu as if they're two different realities, as if his enemies have their own power, their own rights, and their own will, and God has nothing to do with it. That's the way it sounds. Now Moshe Rabbeinu, just the opposite. Moshe Rabbeinu comes back to Kodesh Baruch Hu in the end of Parshat Shmos and says to Hashem, "Why'd you send me? Why'd you send me? You sent me to go down and free the Jewish people, to end this exile. And what happens instead? You make it worse. You've done evil to this people. You have done evil to this people because you made Paro tell them to go get your own straw. You made the exile more painful for them. So what was the point of sending me down? Just to humiliate me, to embarrass me?" And amazingly, Hashem comes back and says to Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, "I don't understand you." I mean, I do understand you. He doesn't say that. He just says, he says, I promised the forefathers that that their descendants would be redeemed. They would go down to Egypt and eventually be redeemed. They never got a chance to see the redemption progress, but they believed me anyhow, never doubted me. You are watching the redemption take place before your very eyes, and you're kvetching, you're complaining. You're blaming me for all the bad. This is the Geula in process, in the redemption process. So Moshe Rabbeinu seemed to understand what the Gemara is talking about, and yet is criticized by Hashem. David HaMelech understands what the Gemara is talking about, that nothing can happen if it's not decreed first in Shemayim, and yet he talks to Kodesh Baruch Hu like he's not involved. It seems to be just the opposite of what should be in the end. The Gemara says there's a machlokus between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. A couple of discussions. It's all these pages, from Tzadi Zayin on a few pages talking about the redemption, Mashiach coming, and finally on Tzadi Zayin and Mebase, there's a machlokus about whether or not all the end days possibilities have come and gone. And then finally, Rabbi Eliezer says, if the Jewish people do tshuva, then Mashiach will come. The Geula will happen. If they don't, there will be no Geula in the end. That's what he says. Rabbi Yeshua says, Chas v'chalila. He says, no way. It's not possible. The Geula is going to come. The Jewish people will do tshuva. And if they don't, Hashem will raise up a king who will make decrees like Haman did, or Paro in his time, and the Jewish people will do tshuva and merit the redemption. So really, what sounds like a disagreement, an argument, is actually not a disagreement, an argument. It's not. They're actually agreeing with each other. You're right. There has to be tshuva. But Rabbi Eliezer says that if they do tshuva, yes. If no, no. As if that's a possibility. Rabbi Yeshua says there's no possibility. I agree, they have to do tshuva. And they will do tshuva, either on their own or because they're forced to. But either way, they're going to do tshuva. Because Mashiach has to come. There has to be a final redemption. So therefore, it's not an option. So it's not even disagreement here. If a person walks into a store and they see something they like, a sweater, whatever, they see something they like, pick it up, look at it, try it on, fits. They turn around and then walk out, right past the cashier. They don't bother saying, not even say, bye, thank you very much. They might be polite. They don't pay. What's the first thing that happens? You call the police. The person is shoplifting. People don't do that. If anyone does that, they know they're stealing. No one goes into a store that sells things and thinks they get, and thinks they're going to get something for free. We know we have to pay for something. You walk at the store, you want a product, you're going to have to pay for it. And you don't mind. You go to a restaurant, you're going to have to pay for it. You don't mind. It may be more than you expected to have to spend, but still you understand that you pay for what you get. That's just the way the world, it's the economy needs that. No matter how generous the owner might want to be, but he has to pay the bills, there's costs involved. So you pay for things. That's the way the world works. The most amazing thing is that we don't apply the philosophy to everyday life all the time. As someone has pointed out, or many people have pointed out, you'll notice that you never hear about people asking the question, why me, when they win the lottery? If they lose the lottery, if they don't win, right? Even though statistically the chances of winning are astronomical. You get hit by lightning twice before that's going to happen necessarily, but don't suggest that possibility. That they somehow they feel they've been cheated, they feel ripped off. I should have won. Why can't they win? He won. That person, has to win. Why can't it be me? But if they win, it's like, why me? Well, he could have won. He could have won, but I won. No, it's like we seem to act in life as if the good that we have is coming to us. Whatever good we have, we don't question. I might be happy about it. I might feel good about it. But this is the starting point is that no, but it's I'm living. You put me in this world. It's like children who say to their parents, the parents gave them the opportunity of life. They got married, had kids, and gave them the opportunity of life. And a child comes back and says, "I didn't have to be born. You brought me in the world. You owe me. You made me have to go through this world. I could have been happy living in Shemaim, and here I am in this world. You gave birth to me, so you owe me." What are you talking about? One of the principal reasons why there's a mitzvah, a kibbut of an aim, is hakor satov, recognizing the good, not just thanking for the, but recognizing the good. The essence of the mitzvah of honoring your father and mother is recognizing that, and what good is that? They gave you the opportunity of life, even if it's not what you planned it to be, even if you're going through a difficult time, it's an opportunity, and you'll understand and appreciate one day why it was. But we get miserable because this person has things I don't have. This person doesn't seem to be suffering the way I seem to be suffering. I wanted this, it didn't work out that way. I was driving along, I was doing a mitzvah, whatever, and this got a car dent, right? And my tefillin need to be, we're always expecting things to go our way, or we just really want them to go our way. And so when they do happen to work out positively, we don't think to ourselves, at what cost? At what cost? If I go into a store and I buy something, I go into a restaurant and I eat something, I know at what cost. I look at the menu, I look at the prices. We want to know. I'm going to order this because this is only, 65 shekels, and this is, 100 shekels. So I'd like to have that, but it's expensive. We know there's a cost involved. But for the good things that happen in our lives, and Moshe Rabbeinu learned the lesson the hard way. That's what Hashem told him. He said, "Yeah, nothing has changed. I didn't tell you all the details. I agree, because you wouldn't have gone down, because you didn't understand. But you're watching a redemption take place. Who says that this nation, this people, yes, I promised Abraham, and yes, I promised Yitzchak and Yaakov is going to happen, and their schus, their merit, all this is taking place. But nevertheless, there's a certain amount that these people have to do themselves to warrant being the generation to go out. It's a gift. It's an opportunity, and it's not for free. If they had done the tshuva on their own, they had done the work, they had paid their dues, so to speak, by doing the necessary work, as the Rizal says, they weren't supposed to go down to Mem Teshari Tuma, the 49th level of spiritual impurity. They're supposed to rise up to the 50th level of Kedusha and elevate Egypt too, as will happen in the future in the Messianic era. That's what they were supposed to do. And they could have done that theoretically if they had simply kept to the ways of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, made themselves holier, etc., etc., etc. Like anybody who works on themselves, but they didn't do that. Instead, they were enamored with Egyptian society. They began to integrate, as the Haggadah says, they did Mitsuyanim Sham, right? They excelled down there, and they assimilated. So they didn't do the work. Now comes the redemption, and there's a cost. So therefore, same thing. They have to pay. Hashem says, this is they're paying. For me to do the redemption, they have to pay. They have to have earned it. It has to be theirs. Why? Why is it so important? A rabbi once asked his Talmidim, if you had a chance to have $1 billion for free, or $1 billion you worked for, which would you choose? $1 billion for free, or $1 billion you work for? And without fail, everybody said for free. You're going to end up with $1 billion no matter what. Either way, you're going to have $1 billion. No, they'd rather not work for it. Joke's on them. Why? Because like everybody else who gets anything for free Like Asaph, for example. The Gemara says if you have 100, you don't want 200. You have 200, you want 400. Why? Why can't they just stop at a certain point in time? Elsewhere, we have a mission that says, Bismech bechelko. Ezu Ashir, who's a happy person? Who's a wealthy person? A Semech bechelko, somebody who's happy with this part. Well, if I get my portion, I'll be happy with it. But in the meantime, I don't have it, so I can be happy. No. Whatever you have, that's your portion right now. But you can't have the happiness. Why? Because in order to fully experience something, in order to be able to actually feel as if you have something, that it's yours, you have to be miyachid with it. The Torah says that Adam and Chava were created as one person. Well, the Torah itself, the Gemara says that. Medrash explains it. The beginning from the Torah, it sounds like they're just Adam, and then Chava came after that from his rib. But according to Kabbalah, according to everything else, that there were two people attached, at the back. This thing called in Kabbalah called Nasira, a separation, a splitting one from the other. And then it says that Chava became an Ezer Kenegdo. She became an Ezer, like a helpmeet, a partner opposite him. Because as long as she was back to back, she couldn't be opposite him, and they couldn't have a relationship. So they had to be face to face. But the problem with that is now there's a separation. And now you can either go your own way, as divorce courts will tell you, as relationships happen all over the world. There's no guarantees. The Gemara says, "Kasha zivug kriyas yamsu." Making a zivug, making a marriage work, is as hard as splitting the sea, because splitting the sea is unnatural. It's not the way the water was meant to go. And likewise, taking two strangers and making them one, because the Torah says that therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, shall leave, and become basar echad, one flesh. Why is it so important? Because that's the essence of any relationship. As long as two people are separate from each other, as long as two things, your own property. The first day of Sukkot, you have to own your lulav and esrog, at least for the time you're doing the mitzvah. You have to own it. You can't just borrow it. After that, you can borrow it, but the first day has to be lechem, yours. Likewise, if a person brings a karban chatos, a person brings a sin offering because they did a sin, they have to have paid for it themselves. Has to belong to them. You can't sacrifice. It's not just sacrificing the animal. It's a sacrificing of your animal, because that's what did the sin, the animal part of you. So technically speaking, you should be up there on the altar burning away. But the world wouldn't last. There'd be no people after that. So therefore, Hashem allowed us to use an animal in place, but it's really in our place if it's not my property. But you see what happens. What are we more possessive of? Something we buy or something we get for free? I got it free anyhow. It was okay. I mean, I wanted it. I valued it. It was important to me. But a different story if I actually went to work and earned it, and then I lost it. That's harder, right? But that's not the relationship. Because as long as we don't give something, we actually can't take something either. I mean, tactically, physically, you can take it. It'll be in your hands. Esav Yeshli Rav. Esav had a tremendous amount of property. The problem was he couldn't feel the pleasure of it. He wasn't one with it because it wasn't really his. He didn't do anything to actually get it. He didn't give up of himself. When a man gets married to a woman, it doesn't happen in the secular world. The Jewish world, I mean, it's not a lot of money, obviously, but it's certainly symbolic of what's going on. You have to give, kesef kiddushin. You have to give the money. The value has to go over to the wife for her to give herself to the husband, because we understand this transference is what makes a yichud. It's a yichud that allows us to be real with something. Same thing with ideas. Ideas work the same way too, right? You learn something. You hear a concept for the first time. It's out there somewhere. You can point and say, I recognize. I heard that the other day. Someone says, what does it mean? I don't know. Work on it. So they work and understand it. But it doesn't mean it's going to change your life necessarily. You don't feel the reality of the concept. How many people are walking around hearing things and learning things that really, if they fully understood it in their heart, it would change their lives. It would change what they're doing, but they don't, because they're not one with the concept. Deya bina vahaska. We talk about Kosh Baruch Hu, Tachalin Ladam Das. You bless man with knowledge. You've given Dea, Bina, Va'askel. Knowledge, understanding, and Haskel is like, it's like from the word Sechel, but it really means the capacity, the ability to unify with the concept. And you know that you're one with an idea when the violation of the idea feels like violation of the self. You can't be inconsistent. Being inconsistent makes you feel cheap, makes you feel as if you're acting in a very selfish way. But if it's not one with you yet, it's amazing how much the idea can be violated. It might bother you. You might say, theoretically, it shouldn't happen, but it's not going to affect your sense of being. But when a person becomes one with the concept, that's the only way to experience an idea. It's the only way to experience anything in life. You can't experience, and the truth is, it's an amazing thing because I noticed this a long time, even as a young, a young boy, that I would, I'd go someplace fantastic, let's say, see the Swiss Alps, or anything that would just be a sunset. And I would feel so frustrated because I wanted to I'm looking at it and my brain's telling me, this is beautiful. This is really wonderful. You're trying to take it into your being. It's like a wall that you can't do it. And you're trying to feel more about it, but you can't. And you feel overwhelmed because you're trying to feel it, but it's not registering on the level you want to register. But if you stay there for a while and you see it 4, 5, 6, 7 days in a row, by the seventh, eighth day, all of a sudden you start to really feel the beauty of the idea, the concept, or the view, or the person, Because only when we become unified with something can we actually experience it. And of course, that's the whole relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. In Kabbalah, we have this thing called Yehudim. Yehudim means that you become, you use names of God, right? You unify names of God, but the point of it really is to unify yourself with God. The reason why people can't feel God is because they don't make a point of integrating the knowledge to the level where it becomes part of who they are. So they know about God. And they're saying that Pshat, Remez, and Drush, that the Rizal brings down in Shar HaGilgulim. If a person only does mitzvahs, that's all they do. They don't, they're not concerned about learning. They're not concerned about teaching or learning Torah Shabbat Peh. They're just, Chumash, whatever, basic Jew. And that person, he says, only has access to the level of nefesh, which is the animal soul. You're not going to get much godliness out of that. You might be a loyal servant. You might, stay from Jew to but you're not going to feel God's reality. But if the person then moves one level up, learns Torah Shabbat Peh, thinks about it, teaches it, is involved with it for the right reasons, altruistically, sincerely, because it doesn't work if you're not sincere, then that person gets the next level of soul called Ruach, which what the Rizal explains, that's the first level you start to feel the reality of God. But even still, it's distant. If a person then learns Kabbalah, learns swords, the secrets of Torah, the panemius of Torah, on whatever level they can, so they have access to the level of the Neshama. Your capacity to be spiritual and to feel the reality of God has increased so many times that it's the difference between knowing about the mind of God, being able to see the mind of God, and actually being inside the mind of God, Keviochel, as much as is humanly possible. And it's a whole different experience. And without that experience, God's just a concept, just a belief, just a reality. And that's really what 99.9% of the world has. Wondering why they can't see God, why they can't feel God's presence. Every once in a while, God gives us a taste. By Kriyas Yamsuf, we had a taste. We didn't actually integrate it because that's why we dropped down after. If we had actually were able to integrate it, then we would not have gone back down again. As it says, even a shivcha, a simple, a handmaiden was able to see on a higher level of prophecy than Yechezkel and Yeshaya and Yirmiyahu. But the difference was that when they got to that level, it was theirs. They remained tzaddikim. They had grown to that level. It wasn't a gift. Prophecy itself was a gift, but they got to the level of prophecy because of their hard work. So therefore, they had integrated the concept. They were one with it. Therefore, God was one with them. But at the Yamsuf, it was a preview. It was an advanced showing without people actually being on the level. So therefore, the moment that the showing ended, they dropped off. They lost it. They complained about the water, and the Amalek attacked, etc., etc. But this idea is hugely important. and David and Melech understood it. That's the difference. In the beginning of Moshe's tenure as leader of the Jewish people, apparently he didn't. Apparently he thought that this wasn't right, that they should have been freed. It should have just happened anyhow. The same way the Jewish people by the Yam Suf. They get to the Yam Suf. No, God, you run the world. Split the sea. Do something. Kill the Egyptians, but just do it. Save our lives, because that's the comfortable thing. That's what we need. That's what we want right now. God says doesn't work that way. Moshe says, he prays, and Hashem says, Matitzak alai. Why are you praying? You know what you're praying for? Okay, there's different explanations of why you're praying. Rashi says that the praying itself wasn't the problem. It's just praying too long was the problem. Others say that praying wasn't, but the main thing is, as I've mentioned before in the past, that when you pray for something, it's like making a request. So if you ask somebody for $5 or 5 shekels, you don't have to dress it up very much. Would you mind? You have 5 shekels? Sure, 5 shekels, no problem. They don't make you start a start, nothing. You say, okay, now that I got 5 shekels, how about 5,000 shekels? Oh, wait a second. 5,000, that's a lot of money. I don't get that money on me. I have to the bank and all that. And what are you going to do with it? And what's it for? And when can I get paid back? And, okay, well, about 500,000 shekels. Nothing to talk about. The more you ask for something, the more of the thing you're asking for, the greater the strength of the request to ask for it. Right? You find yourself on your knees begging, please, please, I need it. I'm so desperate. That's what happens. You see people come in to shul in the mornings almost every day these days, collecting for some tzedakah or another tzedakah, and some people, they just rattle. It's a hard thing to do. It's a very hard thing to do. It's not something that anyone wants to do. It's very hard. But sometimes people come in, they actually start to cry. As they're asking for the money, they start to cry. Is it real? Not real? It's hard to tell, but it certainly moves you. It certainly makes you feel more. Now, it's not the difference between 5 shekels and 5,000 shekels, but it might be the difference between 5 shekels and 10 shekels or 20 shekels or whatever, because the request is so strong, the giving becomes even stronger as a result of that. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, you want me to split the sea for 3 million Jews, and according to the Arizal, 90 million Erev Rav. You know what a huge, because it's not just about the miracle. It's also about the fact that so many people are going to witness the miracle. It says that Avram was supposed to die in Ur Kasdim. Hashem thought to kill Avram in Ur Kasdim. Not because he wasn't worthy of being saved, but if he walked out of a fiery furnace unscathed, everybody would have known that the God of Avram is the true God and done tshuva for that reason. And that's not the sincere tshuva. That's being compelled by a miracle. So therefore, for that many people to witness that kind of miracle and not worthy is a tremendous cost. And Hashem says there's no tefillah really that you can daven in the time that you have to do it that's gonna be equal to what you're requesting. So Moshe says, and what's going to happen? The Medrash says that Hashem says that it depends upon bitachon, right? That if you have the proper bitachon, so then you'll be able to cause the sea to split. And I have a whole book on that called "Be Positive," explains it. The Choma actually I was going to show you today, but it takes a little bit too much time to explain it. But it's out there. But the point was that Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu that this miracle comes at a great cost. And what cost is that? See all those Egyptians over there? See how they came running out after you? The best, the finest of Paro's army, ready to pounce you at a moment's notice, to kill every last one of you? And how much trauma? That's why I didn't tell you about it. All the suffering you're going through right now is for this good. All the suffering you went through in Mitzrayim was for that good. Because if you don't pay, it's never yours. The good that you have is not Megilacha automatically. You don't have it coming to you. God doesn't owe you anything, believe it or not. You may think he does. You brought me to this world. You owe me. I didn't have to be born. You don't understand. If you were to exist for 2.5 seconds, just to have consciousness of God for 2.5 seconds, already it's a huge gift. A whole life. That's why in benching we say b'chein b'chesed v'rachamim, because it's like There's so much he's given to us, even if you feel he's ripping you off. He's cheating you. He's being mean to you. He's not taking into account what's important to you. No, he all of that. But he wants you to experience life on the highest level possible. He wants you to experience him. He wants you to own your good. And nobody is able to own any good if it's free. You can have it in your possession, right? You can talk about it, you can deal with it, you can trade it, but you'll never be attached to it. You'll never experience it. And that's what drives Asaph nuts. That's one of the reasons why in Western society, but 80% of people are on antidepressants or taking alcohol or doing drugs and like because we have so much. It's a society that is so blessed with so much more than other societies. Well, how can we afford to? How it's possible to be depressed? Because as much as we own and possess things, we don't take the time to become one with them. I mean, some things you shouldn't, but even the basic things that we should, because we don't take the time to appreciate, understand really what we have in our possession. So it never becomes ours, and people feel empty. They feel as if they don't have, even though they do have. So that's why a person wants 100, they get 200, 300, because like Asaph, Yeshli Rav, I have so much. And Yaakov says, Yeshli Kol, Yeshli must speak, I have enough. Because whatever I have, I make a point of being one with it, unifying, I paid for it. And that's what David and Melech understood. That's what Moshe had to learn, but David understood. He said, let's do a cheshbon over here. Let's take a look. What's going on over here, right? I am David Melech Yisrael Chai v'Kayam, right? The other kings are going to come and go, but I am the king of the Jewish people. Despite my background, despite what I've gone through, I am David Melech Yisrael. When the Beis Hamikdash is finally built, it's going to be built in my name. When Shlomo HaMelech, my son, the tzaddik, is going to come with the Iron Kodesh to go into the Beis Hamikdash, the doors won't open until they mention my name. And I am going to be the ancestor of Mashiach. How great is that? Unbelievable good. Do I deserve it? Who says? I wasn't even supposed to live. The Medrash says that on Rishon was shown all the generations for all of history. And he got to David Melech, and he was born and he died. And he said to Hashem, what's with that? He looks like an important person. How? He said, well, that's his din. So Adam Rishon, the Medrash says, and again, these things have to be understood in a larger context, but Pshat, he says, take 70 years of my life. So Adam Rishon gave up. He was supposed to live 1,000. He died at 970 instead, 930, because he gave 70 years of his life to David and Melech. So I wasn't even supposed to live, let alone, and there's coming, like Shari Gulim, he talks about his life and how easily he almost lost it and how much could have gone wrong. And he survived it all. He even had a son who usurped his power and drove him from the country. But nonetheless, who prevailed? Who survived? And that's why David and Melech doesn't say to Kodesh Baruch Hu, what's with all this stuff you're doing to me? Am I good or am I bad? Yeah, are you helping me or working against me? Which one is it? It's confusing. Are you bringing us out of Egypt or are you going to drown us in the sea? Are we fleeing from the Egyptians or are you going to bring them after us? It's confusing, right? This final redemption. Here we are. We get back to the city of Israel. It's miraculous after Holocaust. But we get to the city of Israel filled with hope. The final redemption, miraculous. Harry Truman, as president, all things happen, the hashgacha, one thing after the other thing. And then there's a war. And we almost lose the country. Then there's another war, we're totally successful. And there's another war, we almost lose the country all over again. And there's October 7th, and all the things that we've gone through that seem to be so anti-redemption. Which direction are we actually going? Well, the Gemara says, you have to know. Then the final redemption is going to feel like 2 steps forward and 1 step back. He knew that already hundreds of years ago. He's saying that. 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But you should know, he said, it's all forward. Even the 1 step backwards is all forward. Why? Because to go the 2 steps forwards, you have to earn it. You have to earn that good. And if you do the work, as Rabbi Elazar says, you do the tshuva, you work, you don't wait for the crisis. You don't wait for the Haman to rise up in power. You do it, you work on yourself now. That's enough. That's good. You're done. You paid your dues. So now the good can come to you. But if you don't, you still have to pay. Just that Baruch Hu has to come collecting. He becomes a collection service instead. And that's all the negative stuff that happens in our lives. And David, he says, I understand. For that good, I had to go through this. It's all you. I'm venting. I'm complaining. I'm pointing out that I see what's going on and it's not how easy to, I'm asking for some help, help as well. But I'm not saying that you're not doing it. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't do it. Because when I take stock of all the good that I have and I realize, lo megili, it's not necessarily mine, but I have it anyhow, I realize I have to pay a cost. And this is the cost I have to pay. I want to cross the sea, miraculously, I got to pay a cost. This is the cost I have to pay. I want to leave Mitzrayim 190 years early. It's a huge deal, right? Not free, as much as I like it to be free. My body's screaming out, free, 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 free. That's what my body wants, free, right? It has to come at a cost. So therefore, Paro increases the slavery. And then the good can fall after that. This is, this is Parsha Shira, right? This is Parshas Haman, the Parsha of Parnasa, the Parsha of the Yeshuas Hashem Keref Ayin, all these things. It's such a hugely important Parsha. And then at the end of the Parsha is Amalek, the attack of Amalek. But even Amalek is necessary for the good that comes after that. That's actually what Amalek is for. It's actually called a Ritzua Bisha, a punishing bad belt, a strap, so to speak, for the Jewish people. And you only use straps, if you're a good educator, to encourage, to inspire good behavior. That people should rise above their Yetzer Haras to do and get good. So, having said that, right, we have to understand, appreciate that the good that we have in life, take stock of it, appreciate it, take note of it, and thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But know that whatever else we go through in life, the negative stuff, it's just paying for paying dues, so to speak. It's allowing us to become one with that good. Because of what we go through specifically, we earn it. Can you imagine if Eretz Yisrael, this is not something I say lightly because it's not my cheshbon. It's just history. It's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's cheshbon. But there's no question that our relationship with Eretz Yisrael at this stage of history is different because of the Holocaust. We feel, and we did, that we paid heavily for it. If that hadn't happened and we just got back to the land, wouldn't be the same thing. Wouldn't be our land. Wouldn't be Eretz Yisrael. Would just be living in this part of the world. And this is important to know. And this is what these parshas are teaching us. There's no free lunches in this world, but not because God is stingy. That's important. He doesn't need anything from us. But that we should be able to have the greatest good possible, we have to own it. We have to become one with it. And we only do that by paying whatever cost is necessary to accomplish that. So we should be zeicha to be able to get to the point where we've already earned all the good we have to get without going through any more suffering, any more difficulty, and be Mekabel Mashiach, without any more exile. If Mashiach comes in, the rest of the hostages, those who survive, should come home, and everybody should come home at this point, B'ezras Hashem, whatever form, whatever, and we should be zeicha to enjoy Gula Shlema without any more enemies breathing down our neck. Shabbat Shalom and B'saras Tevos.